Welcome to the video for Lesson 9 of the Turn the Lights On curriculum. This is the last lesson of the curriculum. In the previous lessons, we have worked on improving our design of the electrical power generation system. In Lesson 9, we will see how to communicate our prototype design with the client. As with previous lessons, in this video, we will just go step by step through the lesson. The details about the activities can be found in the activity video for Lesson 9. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to evaluate the alignment between their proposed solution and the problem, communicate their design solution using evidence-based reasoning, and justify why their design solution is appropriate based on the application of core science and mathematics concepts, information obtained in the problem scoping, and interpretation of acquired or gathered evidence. This lesson can be completed in one 50-minute class period. So let's get started with the last lesson. This lesson is all about communication and decision making. However, let us first revisit our engineering design problem and see what we have done so far and what is needed before we present our solution to the client. Use the engineering design process poster and students' engineering design process sliders to help students identify what they have done so far and what step they are currently on. For this lesson, the review may actually include going over all the steps that we did from lesson 1 to 8. So make sure you plan for sufficient time to review the previous work before addressing the concepts in this lesson. For example, you can ask, can anyone tell me about that problem? Who was our client? What problem did they want us to solve? What were the criteria and constraints of the problem? In the last stage of the design process, the students will have to decide whether or not their current solution is good enough to present to the client, or if they need to revisit previous stages to make minor or major changes to their designs. Some questions they may need to consider here are users able to use the design to help with the problem? Does the design meet criteria and stay within constraints? How could the design be improved based on the test results and feedback from the client or user? As you probably know by now, a very important aspect of design to consider is that design is iterative. This means that when we as engineers think about what is next, we always consider what we have learned in the current step and what needs to be done next. Ask students to look at how they went back and forth during the previous stages before they arrived at the final decide stage. This probably helped them improve their design with every iteration that they did. Remember, improvement is always possible in design. However, in the real world, engineers also have to work within deadlines and submit the best possible design to the client in the given time. So, it is now time to make a decision about our prototypes and communicate it with the client, deciding whether or not our solution is good enough. When looking at where we are in the design process, students will probably easily identify that they are in the decide phase of the engineering design process. However, you should also ask them to think now about the communication and teamwork aspects, which are threaded throughout the design process. Ask them to go back and think about each phase and how communication and teamwork played a role in helping them A, either move forward in the design process, or B, identify ways in which they could go back in the design process to improve their initial ideas. Go over the decide and communication and teamwork graphics with the students to help them identify what questions they have or need to ask. Communicating the final decision to the client seems like an obvious and easy last step, and it is possible that students may rush through this part of the design process. Using the graphics, remind students why it's important to reflect on our decisions and actions, even in this last step of the design process. Engineers must communicate with each other, the client, and the end user to make the product easily understandable. They use evidence to support the design decisions they make and to convince the client that their solution is the one to choose. And they work in teams. This is important because it allows for different viewpoints, which makes products better. Ask students to think about what they have learned about good teamwork and communication strategies, and what more they need to learn to improve their performance as a team of engineers. The activities in this lesson will focus on creating content for presenting the design to our client. But you can also go beyond these activities and ask students to present their work in other creative formats. Encourage them to make short videos to send to the client, or even call in someone to be the client to whom the students can present their designs in person. Go back to the client letter, which is given in Worksheet 1A in Lesson 1. Ask students to review the letter and to note down what exactly the client expects from us as an end product. This is a good time to remind students that engineering is not only about designing products, but it can also be about improving processes. So, it is always important that you revisit the problem statement in the last phase of the design process as a reminder of what exactly the client is expecting as an end product. This not only saves time from going back and forth if the client expectations are not met, but it also helps you maintain your reputation as reliable professionals who can meet the client's needs. After reviewing the client letter, ask students to review the evidence-based reasoning sheets which they filled out in previous lessons. This can be used as an outline to decide what information needs to be included in the final presentation. Students will have some freedom in selecting a format for the presentation that they think best reflects their design and the justifications for the design decisions. They can write a letter or create a poster or slides. Details about this activity are given in the activity video for Lesson 9. You can watch it now by pausing here or watch it later. Encourage students to use information from their engineering notebooks, including all the information from the problem scoping, science lessons and labs, and engineering design results. If time permits, have the students share their letters or posters with the rest of the class. This could be done as a whole class, with the students presenting their letters, posters, or slides to everyone, or in smaller teams with students presenting to each other or reading the letters or posters of the others. Let students ask each other questions about their designs and why they made their choices about which one was better. In closing, at the end of the activities, have students reflect on the entire engineering design process from Lesson 1 through 9. Pass out the Reflect About Engineering Design worksheet, or have students answer the 2 questions from the worksheet in their engineering notebooks, both individually and then in their teams. Ask them to not only think about engineering in the context of our problem of electricity generation, but also about the engineering design process in general, and engineering as a field. You can note interesting points from this discussion to make connections between other lessons and activities that you conduct in class. This can help students apply the skills they learned in this curriculum to other topics in their science and math curriculum and help you integrate STEM learning in your classroom. And finally, now take some time to plan for how you will implement Lesson 9. Take notes in your curriculum document about things you might want to remember, and maybe add some information about timestamps from this video that may help you later when you want to review. If you're watching this curriculum in advance, before implementing it in your class, this would also be a good time to revisit your lesson plans for other lessons. You now have an overview of the entire curriculum, and you can make modifications as needed to make sure the connections are clear and the transitions are smooth as you move from Lesson 1 through 9 of the Turning the Lights On curriculum. Thank you for joining us in this video lesson series.